Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa. Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning in to Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by Botánica candles and more. And if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button. What's up, Phil?
Oh man, it is a fantastic Sunday. Happy to be here. Hope you guys are all
Baba
vibing,
knows the way.
Oh man, the theme music.
Yeah, man. You good?
If you see me on I-4 bumping to that, please just wave.
Yeah. Hey man, let me say something. I like that shirt you got on.
Thank you. My wife got it for me.
It says Our Roots on it. It's
Yes,
a
it
nice
does.
polo. Like you can go door to door.
Yeah, I gotta get you one. Yeah, I could go door knocking with this one for sure. Looking like I'm
Yeah.
selling insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, take me back to when I was door knocking for real estate, man.
Oh man, I love it. But guys, if you want more, even more and more and more, there's a little button right under this video that says join our membership program. What that is, it gives you access to more Joseph Baba Ifa, whether it's extra shows, private shows just for you guys, early releases on all of our podcast episodes, discounts on merch, or discounts on classes. So, and you also get shout outs. So every episode at the end of the show, I give shout outs. So if you want to get on that shout out list, make sure you join our membership program.
Definitely. Check it out, guys. You might be able to get one of these shirts. They're looking all right.
All right, man. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the rules of the Iyaworaje. So, what is the Iyaworaje? The Iyaworaje is the year in white that was identified in the Lukumi tradition that occurs immediately after you initiate as an Orisha priest or priestess. So, in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, they don't have the same concept. They rock white through the ceremony, which is either 3 to 7 days, usually 3. Where with us, it's a 7-day process, and you go through your year in white, known as the Yaworaje. So we've touched on it briefly with other episodes. Like I've had a goddaughter on here that touched on her year in white, and Erica had this great idea. Why not talk about the rules of the Yaworaje, letting people know what they can do and what they can't do, right? So I think that's very key. Because ideally what would occur is when you go to initiate with someone in Orisha, the first thing they should give you before the moyuba or whatever else you're going to be learning is the rules, right? The 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, ironically, is where the rules were born, as well as the rules of the Yawarah. And we're definitely going to cite that Odu with some pataki as well, amongst various others, because it's actually a pretty complex process full of quite a bit of minutia. But if you know how to maneuver it, it becomes second nature. And to be frank with you, I'm happy it's over, but I do miss it at times because it was nice waking up every day just to go through what my routine was like, right? So I'd wake up, obviously clothes are white, your sheets are white, you're sleeping on white. Everything you should be using is white.
Even your
whether
hat?
it's,
Even your hat?
Hat, definitely. Everything that is on your body should be white, right? Or everything that's coming in contact with it to a certain degree. Now, that changes a little bit because a lot of people say, hey, Baba, I have a profession where, if I show up without hair and dressed in all white, I may get terminated, right?
Whoa.
Which is unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. We're oppressed. So there are exceptions that are made where someone would use some type of a wig or something like that to be able to cover that up. Or, their undergarments are white. And then, as soon as they get home, they get in their full Iyawo uniform, which we're going to go over. But for the people that have to work during the Yaworaje, like I did, it's understandable.
Do jobs, like this is a little bit off topic, but like do jobs and careers, do they acknowledge Ifa now as like a, I don't say religion, but you know what I mean? How the year and right, that's a pretty big thing for people.
Yeah.
And like they can't like terminate you. They really shouldn't, based off of religious practices, right? I would think.
I would hope, with our constitutional rights being violated every day, but we're not going there. But I will say this, that you know, officially, I don't know if Ifa is recognized because to humbly tell you, I haven't worked since I received 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 for anyone other than the Botánica.
Okay.
So I wouldn't know.
That's a flex.
I know it's very humbling.
I love
you know what I'm saying?
I love you.
But you know, I don't know. I don't know how corporate America is treating us right now. I know that we're much more visible. I know that we may have more rights. I'm not sure how aware we are of them or how much people are exercising them. I think the victory that we had in 1987 with animal sacrifice might have been the last big one as far as advocacy. But, you know, within corporate America, I don't know. I haven't heard of anyone being fired, at least literally, because I don't think anybody wants that lawsuit. But I'm sure that things could be made uncomfortable to the point and in a way where someone might abdicate their position.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like I had a goddaughter that worked at a certain healthcare system here that is, you know, Christian influenced. And, you know, one of the first things she asked me was, hey, Padrino, is there any way I could take off my bracelet? Because I know if I show up with this at work, I'm going to get blackballed. And, you know, and I told her, you don't have to wear anything. You know, you don't have to wear your necklaces or anything. Mind you, she wasn't going through her Iyaworaje. You don't have to wear anything because the ceremony's already done to your person. But, you know, even her being, you know, educated professional, graduate, degree holder, all these different things, even she was worrisome because you really don't know. Well, you know how you're going to be received, but you don't know where it's going to go from there. So, you know, there still is that worry. You know, people are still petrified to a certain degree for those that still have to wear the corporate mask. So, yeah, it happens. But I will say this. When I was going through my Yaworaje, I was actually still in college before I failed and flunked. But I'll never forget, I had a biology teacher, and I won't mention him just because, you know, out of respect, and, you know, he's a career professional and things like that. But I still, till this day, am in gratitude of him. Because when I showed up the first day for biology, I was in my all whites. I was still going through my first 3 months. I had my long sleeves to my wrist, had my necklaces on, my bracelets, my everything, all white. And I showed up to class. And, you know, needless to say, it was just an awkward moment because people were kind of like looking at me but not looking at me. And I told myself when I matriculated that time, I was going to sit in the front of the class to not fail. So when I sat in the front, he kind of just looked at me and he kept it moving. He was a gentleman from India. So I remember at the end of the class, because the first day of biology, they go over the rubric and things like that. And you kind of talk about what you can do, what you can't do, you know, as far as like attire, you know, etiquette within the lab and things like that. And he pulled me to the side at the end and he said, you know, you can't wear hats during class. And I said, you know, forgive me, but it is spiritual. Like, you know, I promise you, you'll never see me without the hat. It's not a fashion statement in the least bit. He said, well, if I see you around campus without the hat, then you can't wear the hat here. And mind you, we would run into each other and things like that when I'd go to get something to eat or he'd be in the lunchroom or whatnot. And he always saw me with the hat and dressed in all white. So he quickly realized that it was serious and he was very tolerant. I didn't know what his spiritual beliefs were, but I know that, you know, obviously India has its indigenous beliefs and Hinduism and things of that nature. So I'm not sure if that, you know, facilitated his tolerance as well. But really, a really beautiful person. And I remember when I actually, you know, decided to leave college to pursue Ifa, I actually had 106 average in biology when I dropped out. Yeah. Wow. And I don't know how that positively affects them. But he actually called me after because it was a very abrupt thing, completely destroyed my GPA, long story, etc. You know, just things people do in their early 20s. And he said, you know, is there any way I could help you? I know you're going through a spiritual process. Like, he was very, very, very kind, man. So I always remember that. But there are very tolerant people out there. There are people who do care and understand that, you know, spirituality is an expression that shouldn't be infringed upon. But unfortunately, during the Yaworaje, it happens to us more than anybody. Like, I remember my wife has told me this story, and Erica will probably laugh right now, because her and my mother-in-law actually did Orisha together. My mother-in-law has crowned 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, God bless her. And, you know, my father-in-law, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏, was still around, Robert. And they said one time they were at Ross. I think they were looking for like a replacement pair of white shoes or something like that, something quick. And some people actually came running up to them and, you know, basically yelling at them that, you know, Christ this and all these different things. And you know, from what I understand, I never got to meet him, but my father-in-law was a pretty expressive guy. You know, he actually taunted them, acting like he was coming into trance, you know, yelling hallelujah. So, you know, I don't know how that affects, you know, the rules of the Yawarah, but I always found that to be a funny story. But, you know, the oppression happens. You know, I've even had situations where people have come into the Botánica, and I've had to, you know, semi-aggressively remove them from my store, because, you know, either they were where they were not supposed to be, or they were trying to, you know, push an agenda that wasn't our own. I mean, to be frank with you, I even had somebody come from a church one time trying to sell cake and things like that. And, you know, I politely expressed to them that, you know, you might not buy my cake if I sold it in your church. And he fully understand, and we shook hands and he left. But, you know, I'm kind of past the point in my life, in my career, where I'm political or, you know, courteous to people that really aren't courteous or accepting of our beliefs. So if you're going through the Yawarah, please, you know, hold strong to your virtues and believe in what you're doing, because, you know, we're kind of going through a stage now where people are like, is this necessary? And there's various odus that say why it is. I mean, when you look at the odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗏 or 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏, it speaks of why we dress in white for an extended period of time. The goose there was mistreated by his family, and, you know, he was trying to understand why. He visited Orumila. 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to initiate into Orisha, and perform sacrifice with white cloth. He didn't do it initially, but he ended up doing it because nothing else was working for him. He went to heaven and came back dressed in white, and people accepted him and loved him. So he said, you know, I'm going to hang on to this for a while, and he decided to dress in white for a year. Another odu that says why we dress in white for a year is 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, because it says that after we initiate into Orisha, the spirituality of our Orisha is most intensely with us during that first year. So it is our job to try to maintain that condition. And Ifa recognized in the odu of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 that the white cloth was the best defense against negativity attaching itself to the Iyawo, which would cause the spirituality of Orisha to distance itself. And then when you look at the odu of Obeyono or Obe Ogunda, it says that Iyawo, whose name was Iyawo, which was actually a nickname or a pseudonym for Orisha, when she actually was so intolerable that neither Ogun or Osaing chose to marry her. And when Orumila came after seeing himself with Obe Suru, which means Obe is patient, and performing the Ebo of Suru or patience, where she actually defecated on his mother's grave and he did nothing but say, I understand and it's okay. From that moment, she knew that Orumila was the man for her. And out of commemoration for her marriage, for stressing her father out so much and stressing her husband out so much, she chose to wear white for a year as a commemoration of her happiness. And, you know, for all of the purification process she wanted to go through to leave her toxic character behind. So these three odus speak of the Yawarah and why it exists, because a lot of people online with neo-𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 concepts that are not based in our antiquity are like, you know, that's unnecessary. But our ancestors saw it as necessary based on the interpretation of the signs that I just relayed, right? So I think a good way to go over the rules is to kind of go over how a Iyawo's day should look, you know, without revealing too much. So for example, I'd start my day, right? As far as like, you know, long sleeve pajamas and things like that, it can get pretty hot. I mean, the blanket kind of covers that, so you don't have to. Now, mind you, you should never sleep as nature intended during the Yawarah. It's just not it's not quaint, right? Whatever you do after is none of anyone's business, right? But yeah, you wear your pajamas to bed, things like that. You don't wear your necklaces to bed. You don't have to wear your bracelets to bed. You can wear your bracelet or ide orula, which is fine. As far as the head being covered or socks, that really depends on preference. You know, some people would say yes. You have to also gauge that as well, because our body releases CO2 or carbon dioxide through our head and feet when we sleep. So you kind of have to gauge that, right? As long as it's in the privacy of your room, I don't see the issue with it, especially if you have some form of spiritual protections within your room. You should be fine there, as long as there's nothing out of the ordinary there that can negatively affect your head. Or maybe you could use something thin like a stocking cap, which is what I would use. So that was that. So you get out, right? You get out and you go through your basic normal routines. For the most part, it's pretty similar as far as prep for the day. You know, as far as the products you're using, you want to make sure they're hypoallergenic, that there's no scent necessarily involved. You want to be as natural and holistic as possible, but you are allowed to use cosmetic products. Like, I've heard of really horrible stories where they didn't let a person use deodorant, or they didn't let a person use, you know, things necessary for grooming.
For a whole year?
Yeah, or at least the first 3 months, bro. And I kind of was like, man, but you know, these old school houses, man, some of them were just really that, like, you really want to be here, we're gonna put you through the ringer. I don't know how productive that is, but who am I to criticize that, right? Ultimately, it's based on your house. But for the most part, based on modern life and hygiene, you can use products. A lot of the stuff that I would use was like Castile soap, or Dove was my go-to, you know, for all of my products and things like that. You know, I'd use a lot of shea butter as well for like moisturization, whether it be my head or my hands or things like that. Not a lot of scent other than that, which is natural, and you want to make sure you use the white ones, right? To kind of fortify yourself as you're about to, you know, go through the day. I would usually start my day off with a shower, and possibly end it. You know, taking 2 showers a day during the Iyaworaje is not uncommon, you know, depending on how meticulous you want to be. But you want to make sure what you're using is hypoallergenic, as natural as possible. No perfumes, no colognes, nothing that's perfumated. No jewelry other than that which is Ifa, Orisha paraphernalia. As far as with men, you know, getting ready, ideally during the Yawarah, you want to maintain a clean-cut look. Now, mind you, when you go into the Orisha process, you know, or Ifa process, hey, shave beforehand. It really depends on the house as far as facial hair for men. You really have to go back to your godmother or your godfather there, because I can understand why someone would say, hey, keep a clean-cut look. But at the same time, human beings, adults, I don't know. During the first 3 months, though, you really can't get a haircut anyway. So, you know, it might be better just to keep a clean look until the barber can actually really lace you up. And the reason the barber and the doctor are able to touch you, even though they don't have Orisha done, as far as your head and your face, is in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲 they blessed the doctor's hands to save our lives. And in the 𝗿𝗲𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗁𝗲 𝗃𝗵𝗿𝗲 and 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 was where the barber's hands were blessed to be able to groom us, right? So that's why it's okay after those first 3 months to be able to, you know, go to the barber or the cosmetologist or whatnot. But even then, you want to be very careful and make sure that the energetic exchange isn't toxic, because not all barbers and hairdressers are good people or positive. So you have to be careful there. But at least for me, you know, pants, undergarments, tank top, you know, long sleeve shirt. This is the first 3 months. Socks, shoes. I'd have a stocking cap under. Some people use the rogation hat. You know, and you know, all of my my things, right? My idea of Orisha. Mine was a big ochung one. My idea orula, my bangle of 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗏, right? For the people who receive 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 during their Orisha process, the bangle of 𝘃𝗶𝗏 as well. You know, all of my necklaces. Now, as far as men, I would always keep the smaller necklaces on the inside, and on the outside, I would wear my necklace. It's known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗿 or 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗃, which is the, you know, it's a necklace that is longer than the regular 𝗃𝗃𝗃, which represents you as a priest of that Orisha. So I had the nice long ochung one. I loved being a son of ochung in the Yawarah, by the way. I feel like we look the best. I'm sorry. I love you guys. But, you know, it's just the yellow and the white. It does something nice. But, you know, love to everybody. I was just proud of my Orisha.
Can you travel?
No. No, you cannot.
Okay.
Unless it's for work. But great point, by the way. Airplanes, things like that, traveling long distances, really not ideal. You know, when you look at Odus like Eyobe, where he would travel too much and it would bring negative situations. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 spoke of it as well, where they tried to kill Orula on a long trip. You're really supposed to be home as much as possible that year. You know, and the Odu of 𝗃𝗵𝗏 and 𝗃𝗵𝗏 also speaks against the Iyawo being suspended in the air. because 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗃 is the Odu of the plains and the birds.
Yeah.
Where Orunmila fell to his death because he tried to imitate, a bird and made wings, and the sun
This is
melted
the
him.
Icarus story.
Yeah, that's the Odu of Icarus and 𝗃𝗲𝗃. Yeah, which the Greeks probably got it from us, to be frank with you.
Of course, everybody
You
steals
know,
from Ifa.
God bless Zeus. But those are the odus why you really can't be traveling or be suspended in air and things like that, because at that point Ori is not in a stable state. Neither is 𝗃𝗍, which are the feet, which is where Eshu lives, right? So that's for me, first 3 months. Now for women, the Yawarah is much more complicated. God bless you, ladies. Because you got shoes, you got socks, you got stockings, you got undergarments, you got the trousers that go under that, you got the skirt, you got obviously, undergarments above around the chest, you got undershirts, you got the shirt, you got the shawl, you got the turban, you got all of the bracelets, all of the necklaces, all of those things. A lot of women won't even leave the house during the Yawarah. They're like, the hell with that, I'll just stay home. You know what I'm saying? I'm not mad at them. But it's a big sacrifice. Now someone might say, well, Baba, why can't we expose anything from the knee down or the elbow down? Mind you, when you become an Iyawo, you start manifesting the energy of 𝗶𝗸𝗏. 𝗶𝗸𝗏's whole life is basically a Yaworaje. He lives the Yawarah every day, and it's not because he's a saint. It's because all of his mistakes led him to having to assimilate this lifestyle for his survival, right? So being that 𝗶𝗸𝗏 was an albino, and being that he's also syncretized with the snail, obviously sun exposure could be a huge detriment there. And they say that it causes Ori, for high temperatures or exposures or even low ones, to fall into or fall out of equilibrium, right? So that's why you really shouldn't be exposed during those first 3 months or the first trimester, right? Even though it's more than 9 months, the first quarter, to be able to preserve all of these conditions of Orisha that just came out. But also, why the shawl and extra garments as far as not being exposed even from a feminine standpoint? In the Odu of Obekana, it speaks of when the Yawos used to not use the shawl or long sleeves within their Yaworaje, but specifically the first 3 months. And negativity would latch onto them, envy, jealousy, the interactions. Like the Odu Otura Ira speaks of why the Yawo shouldn't give their hand to anyone other than possibly their godmother or Yubona or their parents, right, or their children or partner, because the energy exchange is just too crazy. They might take away your ide or cause you to fall out of equilibrium. That's an Otura Ogunda, right, because of the palms being a chakra as well. But in Obekana was where the Iyawos would go through this process, and they went running back to their elders. The elders went running back to Orula. Obekana was revealed where they were told to perform sacrifice with extra white cloth or yards of white cloth, and then he started covering the exposed parts of their body with the cloth, and the women specifically with the shawl of Orisha, which was born in Obekana, and it would deflect off of them, all of the evil eye and the negative stares and the curses and toxicity would kind of, bounce off of them. Until this day, that's why it's still utilized, whether it's the head coverings. I've never seen gloves, but then again, the Yawo is not touching anybody anyway. But that's why we're so covered, because when you're a baby, it's like when you take a baby outside. Unless you're in Norway or Scandinavia where they leave the kids outside in the freezing cold, and even then, they're still covered from neck to toes. When you take a baby outside, they're delicate. So it's not that you're trying to be babied by your elders, but your Ori or your head or your initiation is in such a fresh state that anything could cause you to fall out of equilibrium. And in a state as delicate as that could be lethal. So it's very, very, very important, as minute as some of this may seem, it is very important that you follow through. And that's why the prep process with the Yaworaje is so important, because, it's like if I'm going to start a diet, right, and I have horrible eating habits, and then all of a sudden, wow, I'm dieting, I'm going to fail, because, I haven't overcome the addiction to, my palate and fat and all these different things that I might like to eat. So with the Yaworaje, it's the same thing. If you don't give people time to prepare at least 2 months beforehand, they're not able to adjust their lifestyle. So like somebody that likes to go out to the club, right? Which is your right, you know, you have a right to go enjoy yourself. Well, there's none of that for a year. So it's
wow.
So when you got a weekend warrior or a party animal and you're like, yeah, you have to crown and stay home, that could cause some anxiety. That could cause some PTSD. So you have to build and groom people towards that. That's why, you know, in our case, from the moment we get the money for Orisha, we sit down for 6 months just planning and prepping and things like that. Not because we don't know the ceremony like the back of our hand, but because we are meticulous, because it's not just about being able to do the ceremony in a weekend from when we get the bread. It's about prepping the Iyawo. It's about going through those misas. It's about really, you know, feeling them out and getting them ready for this process so it's streamlined and they're ready. Because the Yaworaje may possibly be the worst and most loneliest year of that person's life, you know, where they're not going to interact with their friends as much or uninitiated people or their family. Your family becomes your house of Orisha and most importantly, your Orishas, right? So that's why rules like, hey, you can't go out for a year, you know, or be in public places like that. Like the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 says, or 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 says, or, you know, like things with like alcohol. You may have somebody that likes to indulge, when in reality, during the Iyaworaje, the person should not be indulging in things that cause Ori to become unstable or transform, which is what the word oti means. It means transformer. So all of these things have to be gone over beforehand. And the restriction on oti is in the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍𝗍. When 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗍 drank the palm wine and he, you know, when he was formulating the head, he made mistakes. Or 𝗃𝗲𝗏 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗏 or 𝗃𝗏𝗍, where it says 𝗃𝗃 drinks during the day and leaves at night, is not good, you know. Or if you look at things like smoking of any shape or form, in the 𝗿𝗶𝗍𝗍, it says when the smoke would disturb Ori, 𝗃𝗏𝗍, and 𝗿𝗲, and 𝗿𝗏𝗻. So, you know, it's another thing that really shouldn't be indulged in during that year. You know, so these are things that people have to prep for because people have habits. I will tell you this, I did a very good Yaworaje, but at the same time, I was a younger man. I really didn't have, you know, some of the habits that I have now. So maybe it facilitated it a little bit more. But for people that already have a lifestyle and things like that, you know, they have to be prepped. And if it's something that people can't mitigate, then it should be done in a way where it's socially acceptable, in private, or within moderation. You know, no one ever wants to be in a situation where, you know, they say, or somebody comes to them because, you know, our spirituality is one of the most gossipy that exists. Hey, just saw your Iyawo 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗏 drinking at the bar on the corner. What's up with that? Okay. So then I have to go to the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗏 and be like, hey, bro, if you were going to have a drink, have it at your house. Don't have it in public in front of everybody in a way that it could besmirch the house. So just having those very frank conversations, because some people are going to be able to make the adaptations. Some people aren't. Some people say they're going to, and then when they're in it, they fail. You know, and that's where, you know, as a spiritual house, there has to be that support system. But always maintaining the prestige of the house, because it's not what people know, it's what they saw, really, and are able to prove. But yeah, things like that ideally shouldn't be indulged in. Alcohol, tobacco, nightclubs, and all of them have an 𝗿𝗏 as to why. Right?
I got a ton of questions, which
no, please
we
sound off.
We may need to have a part 2 because this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, and if anything, yeah.
But like, okay, so I'm kind of a clumsy person, right? Sometimes I forget.
Me too.
Right? What happens if you make a mistake? Like you forget to wear white for a day. How do you fix it spiritually?
Oh, that can't happen. But you know why I say that, brother? Because the Yaworaje is like going to jail or like going into the military, I would presume. Meaning that I've never been in neither. But I know that there are two situations where there's a lot of strictness and repetition. So I remember in the Yaworaje, I was so institutionalized, like I would remember things without remembering them. Like I would have this moment of like, oh my God, did I wear this? And I'd actually have it on. But I was so in a routine that I never forgot. Like I never accidentally put on a black sock. Another thing is you kind of prep for that. I got rid of all my clothes and everything beforehand. I put them in boxes and I said, well, whatever survives this year, I'll see in a year, you know, just to make sure I'm doing things correctly. And a question like yours is ideally the one that the initiate is going to ask their elder before they go into this, because my job is somebody that's accepting those funds and accepting the responsibility of your destiny. Taking this step is to put you in the best position based on the best advice I can give. But we're in a time now where it's like, okay, You got the 20 grand for Orisha? Give it to me. All right, we're doing it next week. We don't even know each other. We haven't even had a chance to speak any of these things. And that's what leads to embarrassment. You know, I've seen it, man. I've seen really, really bad things. Like, you see people doing things during the year in white that I wouldn't even want somebody out of the year in white doing, you know? But I can't blame the Iyawo or the client as much as the elders and the people who accepted the money and are supposed to be mentoring them and guiding them, you know? Because the day we put funds before our concepts and morals, we're dead. So what happens is a lot of people are like, yeah, I really don't care what the Iyawo does because the Iyawo's not going to listen anyway. Well, if you know the Iyawo's not going to listen, why are you taking the money? You know, it's like, you know, it's just that kind of situation. And if you're in that situation, it's not the one to be in because it's a reflection upon our faith. I mean, you hardly see a priest in full regalia, you know, smoking one on the corner. You really don't. So we have to hold ourselves to that same regard. Now, do they do it? I don't know, but at least they're doing it in private. So there's no way I don't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing over here. It's all about prestige. It is a very prestigious process. And until someone has explained that, they have no idea.
All right, so I have a ton of questions regarding the year in white. So,
Nice.
I mean, you cool with me asking some of these? Because these are probably questions that people in the audience or newcomers to Ifa have. And this is just questions that come up while you're talking that just popped in my head. So,
For sure.
okay. All right, so I mentioned earlier I was kind of clumsy and stuff. You know, what happens if I forget to wear white? You already answered that one. But what happens if my 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 breaks or I lose one of them?
So when a necklace breaks, it could be a couple different things. It could be that it's been through so many processes, it's weak, you know, physically, like the thread, or it could just be bad quality thread, or it could be that it picked up a spiritual vibration within the realm of the Orisha that broke. So for example, like if your 𝗀𝗲𝗃𝗃 necklace breaks, it's probably because you're going to have issues with conflict, or, you know, possibly even your relationship. Or if you have an 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 necklace break, it could be because you're having issues with your love life or your children or possibly your health from a circulatory standpoint, you know, things like that. And all you have to do is contact your elders, and we ask kind of the oracle what needs to be done, if anything, and, you know, make it happen. But it's usually a sign, usually.
Okay. So you and I, we're both foodies,
Yes, sir.
right? Are there any specific foods that if we are in our year in white, we need to avoid, or are there any specific foods that we need to eat during this?
Really great question. Very good question. So here's the thing. Talking about the eating thing before we get into the specific food types. During the first 3 months of the Iyaworaje, the person is expected to eat on the floor on their mat. And they have a specific set of utensils that is for them that is not supposed to be used by anybody else. Specifically a spoon, a plate, and a mug, right? In Spanish, it's known as, the concept is esmaltada, which is like, it's kind of coated or something like that. And it's usually white with like a blue rim. You know, it's very popular in the Caribbean. But you're supposed to carry that with you everywhere, apart from an umbrella, which we'll get into in probably the next episode on this. But that's how it is for the first 3 months. You're on the floor. Now, the reason being is because remember that this is an elevation process. It's somewhat of a hazing process, to be frank with you. It's to teach humility, right? And to teach a little bit of dependence, because we are ultimately dependent on our elders, being that we are being reborn once again. And it may involve asking something as simple like, hey, can you please serve me some more water? Like the Iyawo is not even supposed to serve themselves, especially in religious functions. So that's the first thing. And ideally, they really shouldn't be going out to restaurants and things like that, or exposing themselves to large groups of people. And definitely, they should never be eating standing up. They shouldn't be eating like outdoors per se. All of these things are pretty taboo. Now, as far as what they can eat or cannot eat, that really is dependent upon the 𝗃𝗏 of the hand of Ifa. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, but what about the 𝗃𝗏𝗏 Orisha? Well, everybody has their own concepts. But in the 𝗃𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗃𝗏, it was identified that Orunmila is the revealer of Ewo, right? He is the deity that identifies what's good for us and what's not, whether it's deities, food items, or situations and habits. So we really have to lean on that Odu, and then whatever the Odu of the Orisha, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, or head Orisha reiterates, we have to firmly stand upon that. So for example, let's say someone's 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗍 and they're a child of Oya, right? Where it says Oya doesn't eat ram. And then when you go and let's say in Oya, you pulled the number 6, which the Orindi Logun is a singular oracle, don't eat ram. Okay, I'm not eating ram. So it's really like that, but it's always based on the hand of Ifa. Those are really the only restrictions. Now, you're going to hear some people say, well, no Santero should eat coco. Well, good Lord. You know, I just don't know how that's feasible. I mean, you know, when you look at the Odu of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, the coconut was one of the original food sources, as well as in the Odu of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲. No Santero can eat pumpkin. Well, good Lord. You know, there's Odus where the person had to perform sacrifice with pumpkin and consume it. Like, look at the Odu of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, you know, things like that. So everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, but it's individualized. Ifa is not a generic religion. There is not a generic taboo from a gastronomic standpoint. Everything is based on your Odu of hand of Ifa and that which is repeated or reiterated in your Odu of Osha, of the singular letter that your guardian Orisha reveals when you crown.
Yeah. Okay. So, if I recall correctly, women can do their year in white, of course, right? Because I think Omiyoko, she went through that, right?
Yeah, no, everybody does their year in white when they crown in the Lukumi context. Now, the only time that's circumvented is there are gentlemen who do Ifa that don't finish their year in white, which is okay. They'll usually do their first 3 months and then they go to Ifa.
Okay, so what about?
But I finished mine. I'm just.
What about? Can a woman do her year in white if she is pregnant?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually a great point. So a lot of people, you know, when they're going to crown and whatnot, they get a little nervous. They're like, hey, Baba, can I have sex? And the answer is yes. But you have to be careful and make sure that the relationships that you carry on or begin in the Iyaworaje, you're planning on having them last. And the reason being is because, you know, sex is an energy exchange apart from other things. So you have to be very careful and make sure you're very serious about the person that you're interacting with on that level during that year, because you're exchanging energy, and it's very sacred energy that you're manifesting and vibrating at that moment. So like people that are married, right, and one of the partners does Orisha, they can continue their routine, no problem. They're married, they're together, no taboos there whatsoever. Now, if you want to begin a relationship during the Iyaworaje, that's okay too. But you have to be very, very, very selective and make sure that this is somebody that you see yourself with for over a year plus, right? Be very, very, very selective, because the wrong energy exchange or something that's just casual, really not recommended, because it's way too much, you know, convolution of energy.
Yeah. Okay. So when does the year in white officially end? Like, is there like a closing ritual or anything like that?
So here's the thing. You have some people that say it's a year and 7 days. It's a year and 16 days. Technically, it's really a year from your birthday of Orisha, because that's when you start wearing white. You know, just because you're in the room doesn't mean you're not going through it. So with us, it's the birthday, and that's it. Now, some people say, no, a year and 7 days, because the 7 days in the room doesn't count. I mean, to each his own, but it's a year in white, and that's what the Odu says. But it officially starts for us from the birthday and ends on the birthday. And then after that, the day after, your life is your own. And to be frank with you, it's really one of the weirdest feelings. You really become institutionalized, you know, because ideally you should be in a routine where it's second nature so that you don't make mistakes with it. You know, the Yawarah is almost like a pet. You have to wake it up, you have to walk it, you have to feed it, you have to change it, all these different things. And a good Yawarah will really set yourself up for a great life and rest of your spiritual and religious career. I really attribute how things have gone for me after my Santo from my Yawarah. When I did Santo, I wanted to do Ifa, but I didn't have the means. I mean, I paid for mine and my mother's, you know. So after I did it, I said, well, I'm probably not going to do Ifa for a decade. I'm not going to come up with the funds. And before the end of the year, an opportunity presented itself that I would have never thought of, and it really materialized, and I got the money, and I was able to do Ifa. I did Ifa in December. My Yawarah, my birthday is in October, so I did Ifa 2 months after I finished my year. Where when I did Orisha, I said I'm never gonna have the money to do Ifa anyway, you know. So, a good Yaworaje will really set things up for you. Now, mind you, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I was home. My grandmother loved it because I was taking care of her the whole time. I was driving her around. I mean, it really just worked out for me. But you know, it's very key to have a good one to really set things up for the future. And as far as the pregnancy thing, you know, and I think this is a great point to make as well. A lot of people say, hey, I'm pregnant and I do Orisha. That means my child is crowned as well, right? Nope. There is no 2-for-1s. The person's Ori, when it is within their mother, has not revealed itself. That's in the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍𝗏. 7 days or 9 days in nature based on gender must pass before Ori reveals itself. And then the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗃 says, before 7 years, no one is automatically crowned or should be crowned because Ori is not prepared for that medicine. So even though the medicine is flowing through the person and the reincarnation and whatever you want to call it, that doesn't mean it affects the child within the womb in a consecratory sense. So the person that was in their mother's womb when their mother crowned is not born crowned. So now, mind you, when they go for their hand of Ifa, like the way we do it, be like, okay, this person's receiving hand of Ifa. Are their parents crowned, or do they have mano orula? Has anything been identified spiritually, ancestrally? Yes, we're all children of Yemaya. I'll ask for Yemaya first in the mano orula. But that doesn't mean that the person's crowned, and it doesn't mean Yemaya might be their ancestral energy. So just wanted to throw all that out there.
Okay. So after someone does their year in white, can they take godchildren on?
Yeah. Yeah, I would wait the year in white. You have some people that coming out of the room want to initiate other people. In my opinion, that's taboo. If someone really wants to initiate you, they'll wait. You know, there's really no rush here. I don't understand how a baby can give birth. So if you're a baby during your year in white, and even after to a certain degree, but we don't need to hold you back neither, you shouldn't be crowning people or initiating people within that year. You should be learning, doing some grunt work, getting dirty, and really just picking up the axe and chopping wood. Like, you really have to just pay your dues during that year. But yeah, no one should be initiating anyone before the end of the Iyaworaje. There's no reason. You haven't finished yet. So.
Okay. So sometimes people may feel disconnected, right, from their Orisha or anything. Are there any specific 𝗿𝗶𝗍𝗁 or rituals that they need to do to feel connected, to feel reconnected?
Yeah, so like I had my routines, like for example, like after I would get dressed and things like that, I would go, maybe I'd do this before I got dressed or after. I'd go, and the first thing you do is you salute your Orishas, right? You start with, ideally you have them in a space or in a room or maybe the garage or whatever. And, you know, they have their instruments and things like that. You throw yourself, you salute each of them with their instrument. And, you know, you have a moment of meditation. You should probably salute your egungun or your 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 as well. Maybe cleanse yourself at the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏. All of these things are helping maintain that energy within, you know, that year and before the day begins. As far as the instruments and why we salute Orisha in the morning, it's kind of like an 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏 in a very streamlined standpoint, but the instruments and the salutation in the morning, or in Odu's like a 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 and 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, you know, as far as the invocation and doing the 𝗵𝗏 during your moyuba, to be able to call that energy back, maybe taking some time to study your book and all the things that came out, or set up a schedule and study plan throughout that year so you can learn the Odus that were revealed for you, specifically your guardian Orishas, your hand of Ifa, and then the other ones that the Orishas gave you, being that you should learn the shell anyway. And make sure you're coordinating with your elders to get the things done from your readings. Now, I'm not talking about all of the pages that say consejos or advice. No, I'm talking about the literal things that came out via the shell that are written right next to the numbers that the shell revealed. Those things are top priority and should be done before the end of the year to facilitate a positive Yaworaje and experience. So after that, you know, after I'd salute, I'd go and have breakfast. With me personally, it was with my grandmother. I'd be on the mat. She'd be at the table. She'd have some like noticiero on. And, you know, I'd go through my process there. After that, you know, we'd kind of get ready for the day. I'd be like, where you want to go? I really can't go nowhere anyway. Because in the Iyaworaje, you're really going to a couple places. Either you're going to work, either you're going to your godmother or your Yubona's house. And that's really it. You're kind of prisoner to your home, and that's not a bad thing. It's really meant to be a year of retreat and introspection. As far as growth, it's a hiatus for sure. But when you leave the house, there's certain things you always have to have. You have to have your mat, your plates, your spoon, your mug. You always have to leave with your umbrella. Now, I think this is a pretty key point. The reason you put the umbrella is because, once again, the overexposure to sunlight, and ideally, there's a couple things that should not occur. The 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗃𝗃, or 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗁 is where the rain became, and also 𝗃𝗶𝗵𝗁 is where the rain became the enemy of the human beings. So the Iyawo should not get wet with rainwater. And if it is raining, even if you have an umbrella, you shouldn't be under the rain unless it's an emergency, which shouldn't happen. And then you should not be under the sun at 12 noon. And the reason being is because in the 𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗁 was where 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃 had enemies. And 𝘃𝐴 wanted to help 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃 escape, but the enemies were at his door. So after performing 𝗵𝗶 and, you know, divination from the 𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗃, 𝘃𝐴 came around at 11:59 and said, oh my God, a monster's coming. Everybody go in their house. So when 12 noon hit, he was able to sneak 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃 out and escape. But at 12:01, they came out, tried to kill 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃, and he was gone. So it says that the person should not be under the sun or exposed at around noon, because had it not been for 𝘃𝐴, a phenomenon would have happened and 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃 would have been harmed. So that's why, you know, there's that specific one as well. Because everybody's like, well, what's the issue with 12 noon? Another thing is the temperature. It's the hottest part of the day, and if you're manifesting 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗃, he doesn't like heat anyway. So that would kind of be the first half of my day. You know, and then ultimately, you're supposed to be home ideally before the sun goes down, and definitely before midnight. Definitely. But ideally before the sun goes down, or as the sun's coming down, you should be home already. And the reason being is because in the 𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗁, you know, it was Olorung and the Irumole, or the spirits of the light, that would vibrate the Iyawo and maintain them positive. But as soon as the sun would go and the moon would rise, there was a whole different slew of energies and things in 𝗿𝗶𝗵𝗁 that could be detrimental to them. So it's not something where you should be out. Now, what does that lead to? That means no nightclubs, no hanging out. You're home.
What about, I'm not trying to be funny, so don't. What about like PlayStation?
Huh?
What about like PlayStation?
Yeah, you can play games. Okay. I mean, ideally you should be spending your time studying, but everybody needs a release too. You know, so if that helps you decompress and whatnot, for sure. I mean, try not to curse in the microphone at the guy at the other line, at the other end of the line, you know what I'm saying? But everybody needs a release. And yeah, in the evening, you could change, usually your sweatpants or your shorts if you're within the house, depending on which month you're in. You might take a shower before you go to bed, you know, ideally. And then at that point, you're on repeat. So like that was kind of like my daily ritual. I'd say goodnight to my Orishas as well. And I think what we'll do in the next video, as far as the rules of the Iyaworaje, we'll go into each of the things that, you know, it's like, okay, apart from what we've touched on, this is what you can't do. And I think that'll be a really nice, complete episode, man, that'll help a lot of people guide themselves.
Okay. Well, yeah, man, I think it's time for us to, you know, do what we normally do at the end of the show, to show some love. Yes, that's right. We're going to show some love to people who show love to you by joining their channel. So if you didn't notice, directly under this video, guys, there's a little button that says join our membership program. That gives you access to a plethora of perks, whether it's extra shows, private shows just for you, discounts on merch, on the classes as well. So many things. And a shout out too. So here we are. We're going to show some love to the VIPs today.
Nice.
Just a straight up VIPs.
Love it.
Right? All right. So here we go. we got Andrew Antholu,
Thank you.
VIP member.
Nice.
Gotta show some love to Ogunbi. They've been
yeah.
an OG member for
going on, brother?
25 months.
Yeah, he's been around. Yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you.
we got Manny Sofik,
Okay,
VIP
yeah,
for
Manny.
8 months.
Sure.
We got Icon, a VIP for 8 months.
Very nice.
Particles of Light, VIP for 25 months.
Good God, thank
We
you.
got Charlemagne Clark, VIP for 23 months.
Oh my gosh.
Luis Caminero, VIP for 9 months.
Nice.
Dominic Santiago, VIP for 9 months. And
Lovely.
Trinity, everybody knows Trinity, for
Blessings,
18
my
months.
godson. I tell you what's most comforting is that I think the VIPs have the highest retention.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome.
Well, they know the value.
Absolutely, yeah. They're getting it with the lives and videos. More videos coming out for the VIPs soon as well. And guys, BotanicaCandlesandMore.com is up and running for all service and product needs. We do ship. Be sure to check out the classes as well. It's one of the perks of the membership program. Be sure to listen to the podcast if you can't see us on Spotify, iHeartRadio. Even ask Alexa to put it on for you. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots. And until next time, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients, he honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.